Let's go for it!
Hey everybody, welcome to The Dark Stuff. It's me, your buddy Dave. I'm the host here of this channel. It's my channel. I control the content. And on this particular video, I'm going to do a little mix. I'm going to do a bit of a record review and a bit of some live concert reviews from some bands I've seen. That clip you just saw before you saw my lovely face on the screen was a little bit of Built to Spill from the other night, playing at the waiting room. And of course, that was Doug screwing up the lyrics and acknowledging that he did and kind of start laughing, walking away from the mic. That's what was going on with his facial expression. He completely fucked it up and just forgot what he was supposed to be doing at that point. It was a weird night for Built to Spill. I've seen them like 12 times, but all right, we're not there yet. We'll get into that in a little bit.
From where I stand, you are home free. The planets align so red.
So we're going to start with the record that I teased up at the end of my last video, which is this. Juliana Hatfield sings Olivia Newton-John. Now, I said that I wasn't going to review it last time because I'd only gotten the CD, which was right here, which I got for the radio show. But I wanted to discuss it because I knew I'd already ordered the vinyl, and I figured I'll just add in any commentary about the packaging once I actually get it. So now I have the record. I've listened to it thoroughly a bunch of times. I decided not to do an entire video just of this record because when I did that last year for Juliana Hatfield's album Pussycat, which was an extended review where I go track by track and all that, you know, that was her original material, and this is all obviously cover songs, so I didn't feel like I needed to go in depth like track by track. I'm going to point out a couple of songs that are my favorites, of course. And then, you know, I debated whether I was going to mention this story or not. I have a particular Olivia Newton-John story. Of course, I got all these crazy stories that go along with everything, but it's an Olivia Newton-John story that doesn't really involve Olivia Newton-John at all. It involves a kind of a negative experience that I had when I was in college that some might actually define as torture, but I mean, I don't want you to freak out and think I was like beaten or anything. No, there was nothing physical. But we're going to do that as soon as I finish talking about the record, okay? So that's going to get you to stay by watching the video. Now, first off, as you know, I'm a huge Juliana Hatfield fan. I've been a fan of her since the early 90s. I first was introduced to her at her first solo album, Hey Babe. I like pretty much everything she's done her entire career. I like when she does the Juliana Hatfield 3. I love the Blake Babies. I love her solo stuff. I thought Pussycat was phenomenal. It was in my top 5 albums of last year. But, you know, in a lot of interviews, Juliana has been talking about the origins of this record and why she really wanted to do it. And mostly because of how heavy and dark her last album was, Pussycat, which was a political record written in the wake of the election of Donald Trump. It sort of summed up all of her feelings about what was going on in the world at the time, and that can be pretty taxing on a person. So she wanted to do something light, and she said Olivia Newton-John has been a favorite of hers since she was a little kid, and she's always kind of loved the positive energy, and which she says hides a sort of darkness. I'm not really sure. Maybe it does. She studied the subject a lot more than I have, but she definitely wanted to do something that wasn't so heavy and just like such a downer and so taxing on one's psyche. Now, I have to say that I was never really an Olivia Newton-John fan. I mean, at her peak was probably, at least in the States, was the late 70s, early 80s, and she had a lot of hits here, you know, like Magic and Let's Get Physical and Hopelessly Devoted to You and these kinds of songs. I Honestly Love You. You know, and I put her in a sort of a category with like you know, people like Barry Manilow and Neil Diamond and, you know, sort of just the 70s kind of pop stars. And you know my history with Neil Diamond. He used to be my favorite when I was a kid. So I understand, you know. If I were Juliana Hatfield, or if I were Dave Hatfield or whatever, and I had her kind of talent, I'd probably do Dave Hatfield sings Neil Diamond or something, because that was my experience growing up. But hers was Olivia Newton-John. I have to say, I just didn't know what to expect with this, and I was so pleasantly surprised. I've been singing some of these songs, not out loud, of course, but in my head for the last like week and a half since I got the record. I am loving this. Now, I previously knew about half of these songs. I knew I Honestly Love You, Have You Never Been Mellow, A Little More Love, Magic, Physical, Please Mr. Please, Hopelessly Devoted to You, Xanadu. And then the rest of these, you know, I didn't really know, or I didn't remember, or I didn't recognize. And what's interesting is, of course, Olivia Newton-John didn't write any of the songs. She was a vocalist, she was a performer. But some of these people who did write the songs, Xanadu, written by Jeff Lynne, I didn't know that. Dancin' Round and Round, written by Adam Mitchell. And also there was another track I thought written by Adam Mitchell. Well, no, only the one. Adam Mitchell is a songwriter that's worked with Kiss. Just saying, there's a Kiss connection everywhere. I had no idea. Juliana plays all the instruments on this except for the drums, just like her last album. It is just, you can tell this is a labor of love. It ends up sounding like an album of Juliana Hatfield originals. If you never heard the radio in the 70s and 80s when you were young, and you never heard some of these songs on the radio, or you didn't experience the early days of MTV when you would see that Let's Get Physical video all the time on MTV and certain other Olivia Newton-John tracks, and maybe you never heard this stuff, you could hear this album and think this is a great new Juliana Hatfield record. Okay.
Have you never been happy just to hear your song? Have you never let some...
My favorite tracks on this are the ones that are getting hooked in my head. Have You Never Been Mellow? Okay, is just a really good one. Magic, both of those written by the same guy, this John Farrar guy. Physical is not a favorite of mine, but Juliana Hatfield's version is fantastic. It's so enjoyable. Let's see here. Please Mr. Please. I didn't think I knew that by title, but once I heard it, was really good. Xanadu, amazing. Juliana Hatfield's version of Xanadu. I've already played it on my radio show like 3 times. It's so good. And it's just, I don't know. Am I going to reevaluate Olivia Newton-John? I don't know. I'll pick up an Olivia Newton-John greatest hits. I mean, look, I reevaluated ABBA, and I see them as sort of on the same sort of plane. You know, like what I said earlier. And so I've reevaluated ABBA, and ABBA had some really good songs. At the time, I hated them. You know, when they were churning out all those hits, I thought it was terrible. But you know, you get older, you reevaluate things, and I'm maybe on the verge of reevaluating Olivia Newton-John. I don't know. It takes an artist as great as Juliana Hatfield to do that for me. So, the packaging, she's got the custom labels there. I have a clear, it's kind of an orangish yellow. Looks a little more yellow to me. It was supposed to be yellow. You got to pick your color, if I remember correctly. Now, if you pre-ordered the record, you also got a bonus 7-inch with 2 more Olivia Newton-John songs on it. This one has Deeper Than the Night and Heart Attack. And a nice little bonus, the artwork is drawn by Paul Westerberg from The Replacements. And, you know, I know her and Juliana Hatfield and Paul are or were close. I don't know exactly what their status is. They did that album together a couple years ago, the I Don't Cares, which was amazing. I think it was my number 2 of the year that year. It was fucking the best thing Paul done in years, and Juliana was awesome on it as well. So I don't know what their current status is, if they're just long distance buddies or what have you, but Paul did the artwork. not really known as much of an artist, frankly, but I mean, I don't know. Is that talented? I'm not sure. I think it looks pretty good. You know, obviously I'm a testament to the fact that you don't have to be an Olivia Newton-John fan to appreciate this record. You could just listen to it and not even realize that those are covers, although if you're anywhere near my age, you could not have existed without hearing Physical, Magic, Xanadu, you know, some of those songs on the radio as a kid. I mean, before you drove, you rode around with your parents, they listened to AM radio and they heard those songs. There's just like, again, my era, you couldn't have avoided it. But it's a pretty solid record, and I'm giving it a total 100% endorsement. It is fun. My next record night group, I've already warned / promised / threatened that I'm bringing this record as my contribution to record night. So just so everybody knows. In addition to that, I got came with 2 little pins there. Olivia Newton-John, Juliana Hatfield pins. And then I got this little postcard that was put inside from American Laundromat, but it's got a little autograph from Juliana, thank you, from her. So that's nice. So, solid collection. I'm 100% behind it. You know, if you don't want to get the vinyl, the packaging is not amazing or anything, go ahead and get it on CD. I'm sure it's much cheaper. They are donating $1 from every sale of the record to the Olivia Newton-John Cancer Wellness and Research Center, and they got the official endorsement of Olivia Newton-John, the Cancer Center, to include them in this package and stuff, so they're aware of it. Apparently Olivia Newton-John has already tweeted out something about how much she loves the album, so that's kind of cool. That's always a nice bonus.
Neophyte! In what year was this fraternity founded?
Do you mean nationally or locally?
I ask the fucking questions! If you want to ask a question, call your mom and ask why she didn't just swallow you with whatever cheap Chili's margaritas your drunk hillbilly ass father got her drunk with the night his tiny crooked dick rained retarded sperm onto her rotten eggs and gave the world the walking, irrefutable pro-choice argument quivering in front of me right now.
I alluded earlier to a story I was going to tell that related slightly to Olivia Newton-John, although it really has nothing to do with Olivia Newton-John. Just happens to be the story centers around one of her songs and a very negative experience that I had that I still feel a mild case of PTSD whenever I hear it. When I was 18 and in college, I went to a college about 1,000 miles away from where I grew up. And I didn't know hardly anybody when I got there. I knew my roommate and that was it. And I didn't know anyone else on campus. This is a campus of like 30,000 people. And my parents suggested that I join a fraternity, okay? And I didn't really think that was what I wanted to do, but that had been their experience. Both of them had been in the Greek system. And so they had good experiences with it back in the 60s and thought that, you know, maybe I should try it. I didn't really want to, but my parents gave you that solid line of reasoning of how do you know you don't like something unless you try it. I don't know if Greek life nowadays is any different than it was back then, but basically if you're a Jewish person like me, the only opportunities you get are to be in the Jewish fraternities. So I got bids from both of the Jewish fraternities and I did join one. And, you know, they make you do some slightly embarrassing shit. You know, you have to stand up in front of the whole room and sing and dance Who's Making Love to Your Old Lady while you were out making love. Okay, that's humiliating to have to do, but that's really not a big deal. That's just, you feel like a schmuck for a little while, and then eventually everyone laughs and you move on. But there were certain levels of like just cruelty and just ridiculous behavior from some of the older people. And when they see that you're getting down on it and you know, they sense it's getting to you, a lot of the guys will come up and say, hey man, you know, it's just a little more time of putting up with this shit, and then you get to do it to somebody else next time. That didn't really do anything for me. I didn't want to do that to other people. I don't want to call someone up at 11 o'clock at night and say, I'm too tired. I need you to walk 2 miles over to my apartment and turn out my light switch because I'm not, I can't get up. I was actually asked to do that by somebody, to walk to their house to turn off the light switch. Spoiler alert, I didn't actually do it, but that's not what the story's about. So we had a weekend where we were punished as a pledge class for some sort of transgression or other, and we had to prepare to sleep at the fraternity house in the basement for the entire weekend. We were supposed to be there Friday at some point, dinner time or whatever, and we were going to be there until Sunday night. And bring your sleeping gear and some clothes and whatever, and that's it. You're not leaving. And when we got there, we were put in the basement, and we were told this is where we're going to be staying for the entire 48-hour period. And then they said, and here's a little added thing to make this experience that much more fun. You're going to hear Olivia Newton-John, Let's Get Physical, on repeat at near full blast constantly. Over and over and over and over and over for 48 hours. You're going to hear nothing but that song really loud, and you're going to have to sleep in that, talk in that, eat in that, live in that experience for 48 hours. Well, let me just tell you that is not very easy to do. That is very, very unpleasant. That is very hard, and no matter how much you try to block it out, and you're thinking, oh, I'm sitting here drinking beers with my buddies, it's not like so bad. Look, you can't sleep like that. And when you hear the same thing over and over and over and over, it does become sort of torturous. Now, they sensed that it was really bothering people by the next morning after we had had to sleep through that the entire time. So we'd been there like 12, 14 hours or something of hearing Let's Get Physical over and over and over and over and over at a volume that you can't easily speak above, okay? They said, all right, we've been punished enough, and they let us go. I quit the fraternity after that. I didn't want to go any further. I didn't want to become a member. I didn't want anything to do with people that would subject someone else to that experience. And, of course, I lost all my friends because they all thought I was a pussy for quitting and stuff, and didn't want anything to do with me anymore. And that's why, part of the reason why I ultimately transferred to a different college. But the point is, every time I've heard the song by Olivia Newton-John, Let's Get Physical, something triggers in my brain and I start to kind of bug out and I have to leave the room. I can't hear it, okay? I've heard it in multiple places. I've heard it in the mall. I had to leave. I heard it in a strip club. I had to leave. I heard it in a bar. I had to leave. I can't do it. Now, it doesn't apply to all versions of the song. The Revolting Cocks had a version of the song in the 90s, and that didn't really bother me. It didn't trigger that same thing. Neither does Juliana Hatfield's version of it. It's the same song, obviously, but there's something about the way that particular Olivia Newton-John version is what triggers the reaction or whatever. And so to this day, I can't listen to that song without bugging out to some degree. And I blame those fuckers in that fraternity for doing that to me. So anyways, that's my Olivia Newton-John story. Again, not really about Olivia Newton-John, but it does tie in with her song. And it's really why I've always had a block against, even wanting to listen to her music. Not just because she's sort of like a Neil Diamond type or whatever, but just because of that negative college experience. And it's one of those things that you do a lot of dumb shit when you're a kid, but like, that's other people inflicting awful shit on somebody, and it's supposed to be a bonding experience between you and these guys, and then you all shared this experience. Well, I shared it with a bunch of people that didn't want anything to do with me because I quit their little club afterwards. So I had shared it with no one, other than myself, really. And it's always been a problematic thing. And when I tell people the story, a lot of people think it's funny, and on some degree, it is kind of funny, okay? I get the humor in it. Having to sit there and hear Let's Get Physical over and over and over could be seen as kind of funny. But I challenge you to last even 2 hours with that song at full blast on repeat, and you not feel a little bit crazy, and you can't leave the room, whatever, okay? And I did it almost 14, so you can suck it if you think that that's nothing. All right, moving on.
Starting to head home.
So I did see a couple of shows over the last couple of weeks, and I'll just discuss them real briefly, nothing too intense, and try to make it kind of clip heavy. I saw David Nance again. This was a solo acoustic performance. He was opening for Olivia Jean, who's a recording artist on the Third Man label, Jack White's label. And it was a Monday night. There were about 20 people showed up for the gig. I watched David Nance. He was great. We chatted a bit before the show. He played this 12-string 12-string acoustic. Another solid set from him. I can't wait to see his band the next time they're coming. They have a couple of gigs here, and then they're going on a tour, and eventually they're going to be hitting Australia. So any Australian members of the VC, if you see the name David Nance Group or David Nance Band or whatever, go to that show.
Stood out like a fire and was burning in the sun, where you cannot see what's behind a closed door, and you cannot hold the lightning in a storm. Pulling here, fell again against the window pane. Poison in the serum, all they taste just the same. Crystal gaze, held for days, cross-eyed at the boy. Swear you saw an answer, speaking of brutal truth.
So seeing him acoustic is a little bit different than seeing the full electric band, and I've done a couple of other videos that feature his with the full band. I like it better with the full band, but Dave is a really great songwriter, and you can just tell just the intensity he puts into just like a 20-minute set. It was amazing. I didn't even stay for Olivia Jean because I kind of worried that I would like it, and I didn't want to stay late because I had a really early appointment the next morning, but I did definitely wanted to catch Nance. Okay, then I had 2 nights in a row going to the waiting room here in Omaha. Friday night was Built to Spill, and Saturday night were stoner metal legends Sleep. Built to Spill I've seen 12, 13, 14 times. I don't know how many times ever since the 93 when I first saw them. I saw them just about 8 months ago at the Maha Music Festival. This was a great set. They're still in this trio form. They played songs. In this case, last time I saw them 8 months ago, they were doing the Keep It Like a Secret album. This time, they were pulling from all over their career. So again, it was pretty loose in this trio form. I was stood up at the front at the beginning of the show, and it was funny because Doug Marsh, the leader of the band, went over to the drummer, and I could hear him. He was like, "Man, you got to play a little faster," you know, because the drummer was just kind of do do ksh, do do ksh. And maybe it needed to be I mean, I don't know what it would, but bottom line is it did seem a little slow at times, and they did kind of drag. But I still enjoyed the set. It was still pretty great. And at the end, they did a cover of Back on the Chain Gang by the Pretenders, which has always been my vote for the best pop song ever written. They did a good version of it. I'd like to hear a studio version because I think Doug would do some really cool shit with the guitars and with his vocal harmonies and stuff. And this was just sort of a raw live version, but I would really be interested in hearing them do a recorded version of that. And then the last concert I saw was from Sleep. Sleep is the like the stoner metal pioneers. They broke up. They existed in the '90s. They broke up for a bit. They're sort of back now. One of the guys went on to be in High on Fire, another great sort of metal band. I've only seen Sleep one other time, and that was in '93, I think. And it was when I lived in Seattle, and they were the opening for Nick Turner's Hawkwind, and they were amazing. Sleep was. Nick Turner's Hawkwind sucked. They were a total joke. Even though I like Hawkwind, but this particular version of Hawkwind was just really, really awful. But anyways, that's a side note. At that point, Sleep played about a 30-minute set because they were the opener, and they did, I think, 3 songs in that 35 minutes. It was epic. This time, now here in 2018, 25 years later, these guys are very popular now. This club was packed. It was so full, in fact, it was kind of uncomfortable for me because it was really, I couldn't get close. My footage sucks. I'm way in the back. I stood behind the bar, even like way in the back or off to the side. I just couldn't really get a good spot. It sounded awesome. I was digging the show, but I don't know. I mean, I'm spoiled. It's like if I can't get up close and I have to stand, look at all these fucking tall people's heads, you know, it's just not as enjoyable a set. So that's not Sleep's fault, you know, at all. They sounded awesome. And I have seen some other people on YouTube that had clips where they were right up front. And so they're on YouTube if you're curious at all. But I did enjoy the show, but again, I kind of feel the experience is a little bit lessened because I was so far away and I couldn't totally get into it. They sold a shit ton of merch. They had a line. The table was in the back of the club, going all the way almost to the front of the club with people buying stuff. And by the end of the night, they were sold out of almost everything they had. Every shirt was down to like one size, the smalls, you know. Every accessory, they had all this stuff. They had, in addition to music accessories, they had no vinyl, at least not by the time I got there. They did have some weed accessories, like a grinder and a storage case or something for your weed, branded Sleep, you know, because that's their big thing. But yeah, I guess for me, it's just I got to be able to get up close for me to enjoy it now, or at least not feel like a fucking sardine. And you know, it's good for the promoters when those shows are packed. They make money, and that keeps the club going, and that keeps the whole system running. But you know, I'll take it when I can get like, you know, when there's like 100 people or something like that instead of like 400, just so it's a little bit more pleasant experience for me personally. All right, friends, that's all I got for you today. Take care. Bye-bye.